During this Adobe Photoshop tutorial, you will learn how to use the warp tool. Take, for example, we have this image on our screen, and you've decided that you need to move the trunk. And you need to move it because, well, either someone has asked you, well, we really like this picture, but we would prefer it if the trunk was actually going up. Well, if you were being asked to do that, then you'd have to actually go out and reshoot this picture. Instead of actually doing that, there's actually a feature inside of Adobe Photoshop that allows you to actually change parts of the image and still make it look like you actually shot that picture. The trick is going to be in how you set up your file to be able to separate elements from each other. And this is the part that might be a little cumbersome, but definitely worth it if the location of where you took this picture is too far away, and it would cost a lot of money to have to reshoot your images. So the very first thing we have to do is, of course, open up our file warp tool. Once you have it open, you'll notice that it is only one file that you have, and we are actually going to be creating a separate file or a separate layer. But right now there's only this one layer. We want to go ahead and rename this layer from layer 0 to background. And to do that, all I had to do was simply double click inside right in there, and it allows me to rename the layer. So let's call it background. Now that we have our layers set up, we're ready to actually come and work with our elephant here. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you that there are different tools that you can use to make selections on items that are on your screen. For example, we need to select the elephant and remove the elephant from the background, because right now this is all one complete image, but we need to put the elephant on a completely separate image in order to be able to adjust and move the elephant and not have to worry about the background being adjusted. We just want to move the trunk of the elephant, for example. So we're going to have to actually separate the elephant from the background. To do that, you can use several different tools that are located under your lasso tools. There are 3 different ones here. Because of the detail of the elephant up against the background, I do highly recommend using the lasso tool, although you can see that there are other options here. The lasso tool, for example, let me come over here, come in and zoom in on this section here. The lasso tool is going to allow me to come in and make my selection. The lasso tool is the one that's going to be the most exact because you get to control it. However, you do have to take your time and you have to have a very steady hand in order to be able to select exactly the area that you want, and you definitely want to zoom in pretty closely so that you can actually see the selection a lot clearer. And I just messed that up, but you get the idea. You have to zoom in really closely so that you're working really close with the image and selecting the parts that you want. Otherwise, you're going to end up getting a little bit of the background, like the green grass here, etc. So the lasso tool, while the best one to be the most exact, is a little bit difficult to use just because it takes getting used to, and you have to be pretty exact. You have to have a really steady hand. But then you also have other tools available here under your lasso options, and let me zoom in so we can take a look at those. So you have other tools like you've got a magnetic lasso tool, which is going to allow you to actually get really close in and not even have to worry about really having to get too close, because the system will do it for you. What it's doing is it's recognizing colors. However, if you have one section of your elephant, for example, here we have some green and gray mixed in together, and it can actually go off a little too much into the green and select your grass. So it can actually move away from this selection. So it doesn't always work perfectly, but definitely a nice option if you need to very quickly make a selection and it doesn't really matter that much that you're 100% accurate. But this little guy here is definitely a time saver because it has this magnet that sticks to the colors that you're surrounding in the surrounding area that you're surrounded by. It sticks to those colors and begins to highlight and select those particular areas. So it is actually a time saver. All right, let me deselect that and come back over. So there's one more I want to show you here. Wrong one. And that is, we've got another lasso tool here that is going to allow you to also get close, and this one also works really nicely. The only thing about this one is that you have to click, 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 and it's almost like, to some degree, creating a straight line. It doesn't give you the kind of curves that your normal or regular lasso tool does. This one is like a click, 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 and it just doesn't quite have, you know, the curves that you would want, especially for an elephant like this one, or, you know, for other things that have more intricate detail. Now, because the lasso tool, the regular lasso tool there is a little, you know, hard to get used to. If you find yourself frustrated using the regular lasso tool and you're not quite getting the selection as you want it, then feel free to use any of these other lasso tools, whichever one you're most comfortable with. And you can always go back later on and practice using the regular lasso tool to make your selections. So pick the one that you're most comfortable with that will allow you to be successful in selecting the entire elephant. And definitely zoom in, as I mentioned earlier, because you do want to make sure that you've gotten a selection of the elephant that you want, and you want to get as close as possible, make this as good as possible as far as selecting all of the portions that you want of the elephant. As you can see, I'm doing a pretty rough job. I'm not taking my time the way I would if I had more time to do this, but for the sake of the video, I just wanted to very quickly make that selection. Alright, so you can see now I have my selection ready to go. Once you have your selection, what you want to do is simply click, do a Control-C or a Command-C to copy, or you can always go up to Edit and then say Copy. Because you want to copy that onto the clipboard, because we're going to actually paste that over into a separate layer. But as far as the background, we're done with having the elephant here, so you want to hit the delete button, or the backspace, to remove that element. So it should now be like a little checkboard box, as you see here on mine. Okay, that's actually the clear background that's behind this image. Okay, so that's what you want to do. So again, all we had to do was say Control-C to copy. Make sure you do that part first, and then you hit the delete button to remove it from the background layer. Next thing you have to do is go over and create a new layer, and we're going to call this layer Elephant. So let's rename this now, Elephant. And what you're going to do here is simply paste your elephant that we copied earlier. All you have to do is paste it in here. So you can go to Edit and Paste, or you can do a Control-V or Command-V as the shortcut. So again, all we did was copy, we deleted, and then we paste the elephant onto a new layer. So now we have our two different layers, where we have the elephant on one layer. As you can see here, there's our elephant. And then we have the background without the elephant. And you saw that I did a pretty rough job, which is why you can see still portions of my elephant on there. So you want to be careful and definitely take your time to make sure you get majority of your elephant on its separate layer. Now we can still come in here and fix these areas quite simply. So you don't have to worry too much about that. Alright, so you have two different layers, so make sure that when we start working on our image here that you are on the correct layer. When I tell you to do something specific, make sure you actually move on to the background layer, or that you're working on the elephant layer, because that will definitely affect when you're actually trying to edit your image. Okay. Alright, so we're going to go over into the elephant layer. Excuse me. So we're on the elephant layer. And all you have to do to get your selection again, the way I just did, was to simply right over the thumbnail part that you see I'm currently on. This is called the thumbnail. The shortcut to be able to get your selection again without me actually having to go and use the lasso and reselect my elephant, because it's on a separate layer and all that exists on this layer is just the elephant. The way for me to simply select him is by simply coming over and hovering right above the thumbnail section, and I hit my control button and then simply click on your mouse, and it will select whatever is on that particular layer. And in this case, all we have on this layer, let me remove the background here so you can see, all we have on this layer is just the elephant. This is going to save me lots of time, because what I need to do is get on my background layer. I don't need my elephant. I need it to be on my background layer. And instead what I'm going to do here, instead of having to rubber stamp using the clone stamp tool and rubber stamp, you know, the cloud or the sky and cover all this area with sky, and then have to come in here and select grass and cover this with grass, and then use this down here to cover the trunk here, because we need to fill this. We cannot have this image look like this with just a space missing. So we have to fill it. So I selected this item so that I could then come back and do a shift backspace on your PC or a shift delete on your Mac to be able to pull up our window here that has our content aware option. Okay, we're in the fill menu. Under contents, make sure it says content aware. Click on OK, and it's going to fill in these spaces for you. Now, it doesn't do a perfect job, but it did a lot of the work for me already. From here, I'm going to come in and work the picture and make sure I remove this from the sky and then fill in this white space here with a little bit of the surrounding colors. But for the most part, it's done majority of the work for me. So it's definitely going to save a lot of time. I'm going to go ahead and deselect the elephant now, and to do that, you do a Control D on a PC or Command D on a Mac. So we're going to get rid of that. But you can see that it wasn't a perfect job. So what I have to do now is come over here, and now I am going to go ahead and use my clone stamp tool. So I'm going to go ahead, and you can see here from my options in my tool panel, I'm going to select my clone stamp tool. I'm going to come over to my image, and I'm going to be able to make some adjustments to some areas here a lot easier using this tool now. You'll notice my brush is pretty small. You can probably hardly see it there. Up here at the very top, I can actually adjust the size of my clone stamp, but okay, so that's a little too big. So you adjust as you need. That's probably a good size there. All right, so I'm going to use that particular size. So now that I have the size of the brush, let me zoom in here. What I'm going to do is come over to an area that I'm going to be stamping. Now, make sure before you start any of this that you are on the background layer. Okay, and you should have been on there before you even did the content aware fill. But make sure you're in the right layer. I'm going to come over here. And what I'm trying to do is to get rid of this section here, right? You see that section of the elephant that's kind of like an outline of it, and then there's that grass and part of the mountain there as well that we need to get rid of. So to get rid of that and to make it match my background, I basically just need to make it white. So I'm going to come and grab a white section here by simply holding down my Alt key button first, and it changes. What you saw that it changed it so that there's my clone stamp. If I click the Alt button, it changes it into this little marker here. And all I have to do is simply click on my mouse and then let it go. All I've done so far is just told Adobe Photoshop, I want to clone this section here that I just grabbed, and now I want to put it over here. So I stamp, I click, I click, I click. That's all I'm doing, just clicking. It's taking any area where you see, when I click down, you'll notice that it gives me that little plus symbol. That's letting me know you are stamping or you're grabbing image from this section here. That's where it's coming from. That's all it's letting me know at this point. And because it's all white, this is actually pretty simple to do in this case, because everything in the sky is white. Where it gets tricky is when we decide to stamp from parts that have color in it over into other parts that may not, or that you're trying to change. That's when it gets tricky. In fact, what we're going to have to do is make our brush a little bit smaller to come into some of these areas down here. Now, you do not have to make this perfect, so don't worry about making this part perfect, because we are going to bring the elephant back into this section. You really don't have to make this perfect. The only space you really need to be concerned with is the trunk, because we're going to be moving the location of the trunk. So you do actually have to clean up that part a little bit. And for the most part, your content aware actually did a pretty good job. So if you don't want to have to go through the trouble of doing these parts, you certainly don't have to. Not necessarily required for you to have to go through all this trouble here. But if you're up for it and you're ready for some of these features using the clone tool, then definitely give it a go. All right, so you're going to see me kind of jump around a little bit here, change up my brush size because it's too large And so I'm coming over and I'm selecting different parts. You'll notice I'll come over here and I'll bring up that little marker again to say, okay, now I want, to copy this part. So, and then I come back over and then I say, now I want to copy this part and then stamp it up here. And now I want to copy this part and stamp it here. And the reason why I'm doing that is because you cannot just select one area and stamp it all the way across. If you do that, it's going to be very obvious. It's going to look like you've stamped an area and it has it's not going to look natural. It's going to look definitely stamped. And it has a very ugly, weird pattern when you do that. So you have to come back over to different parts and click on that Alt button to say, okay, now I want this part, now I want this part, etc. So you have to click, click, click a lot. And that's why I said this is definitely a much more cumbersome process than just simply using the content aware fill, which is a lot nicer, but it doesn't always do a perfect job. So that's why we're actually taking our time to fix some of these areas here. Alright, so for the sake of this example, you get the idea. We've kind of pretty much cleaned it up. If you're looking at this, this should look like an elephant was never even there. I mean, you can't even tell. You've removed an elephant from this entire image. And if we continue to clean that up, you would never have known that an elephant actually existed here. Alright, so let's say we've cleaned it up as much as we're going to there. Now we have to come back over to your layers and make sure you turn the visibility back on the elephant. And go ahead and select your elephant layer. Okay, so now we're going to see that our elephant is back in the picture, and we're going to now adjust the trunk. So to do this, actually Photoshop has made it very simple for us. If you have at least Photoshop 5 or above, it's going to be very simple for us to be able to move his trunk. All we have to do is come up to Edit up here at the top, and then you're looking for Puppet Warp. So go ahead and click on that. And it's going to create a mesh right over your elephant. And again, you had to have been on the elephant layer. If you're on your background layer, it didn't do what you see on my screen here. It would have selected your entire background. That's the clear indication that you're on the wrong layer. So now you can see that it selected my elephant here. So we're interested in moving the trunk and actually bringing it up like this, almost like it's going to look like he's about to eat something, right? So all you have to do is click over the areas you intend to move. So for example, we're going to come down here. We definitely intend to move this portion of the trunk, so we're going to start down here at the bottom and just basically click. And that puts this little yellow pin down that's going to allow us to then move that portion. So anywhere we put a little yellow pin, it's going to give us the ability to move. Okay, so I've placed 3 different pins there. Now all I have to do is actually come back with my mouse. I haven't changed my tool or anything like that. I'm just done putting my pins. All I have to do is come back to my pin and click and drag up, and you can see that it's beginning to change where my elephant is. And you'll notice too that it is actually adjusting other parts of the elephant, so you do have to be mindful of those things, that you don't do anything that completely changes. For example, if I go too far this way, well, where's the rest of the elephant? Well, that doesn't make any sense. So you do have to be really careful that you don't dramatically change the way that this image is supposed to look, because then it's no longer natural. Then you suddenly can tell that, well, that wasn't supposed to happen that way, or that looks really weird. For example, right now you can tell it looks like my trunk comes out a little too much, and so I have to adjust this to make it look more natural. And that could sometimes mean that perhaps this pin shouldn't have been selected because it's causing, that weird look to it. So maybe we shouldn't have put a pin there. You can always go back and adjust that. But you can see that we're beginning to adjust this here as needed. All right, so all I did was hit enter, and then it took the changes. So you can see that I didn't exactly do a great job. I almost elongated his trunk there. It doesn't look really well. So I would have to hit the undo button and then give it another go. So I just did undo, a Control Z or a Command Z to undo. And we're going to come back in, hit edit, and then go back into Puppet Warp. And then give this another try. We didn't quite get it, so let's just start with one here. And maybe one over here, or let's just stick to the one and see how it goes. So then you put the pin down, then click and drag, that's not going to work. We do need another point up here. All right, so let's click and drag, and see that's not working either. So we're going to hit enter and then undo, and then we're going to try it again. So you continue to try until you actually get it right, however it is that you might want to actually have that done. So I'm going to put one up here, see if that will help me as I turn him. It's definitely going way up too high. Not quite where we want to go. Let's put one down here. That's definitely better. Better, but not quite, because it's pulling him out here, which I can always go back in and rubber stamp if I needed to be able to fill in the spots there that I messed up. But you get the idea as far as what we're doing, in that we're able to adjust and change an image without necessarily having to go out and shoot all over again. I could easily fix this with that clone stamp tool, so that it would look like the rest of his body is actually there. Anyway, I hope you have fun with this one. It's definitely a really neat tool called the Warp tool. It's just a feature that came with CS5, and so anything with CS5 or above, you'll be able to actually utilize this tool.